The holographic summons flickered to life in the middle of David Reyes's dinner, casting blue light across his small apartment on Earth's orbital station. He had been eating alone, as he often did these days, when the seal of the Galactic High Council appeared above his table. No one received direct summons from the Council. No one human. Anyway, David read the message 3 times before he believed it. He was being called to testify before the 12 most powerful beings in the galaxy. The reason given was vague. Something about resource extraction violations on a border world called Fanara 3. David had never even heard of Fanara 3. He had 48 hours to reach Harmony Ring, the massive space station where the Council held its sessions. David packed a single bag, kissed his daughter goodbye through a video call, and boarded the fastest transport humanity could provide. It still took him 46 hours to arrive. Harmony Ring was everything the stories claimed. The station stretched across thousands of kilometers, a ring of metal and crystal that housed representatives from over 200 species. David had visited once before, 5 years ago, when humanity first received observer status in the galactic community. He remembered feeling small then. He felt smaller now that a Drenari escort met him at the docking bay. The Drenari were tall and thin, with skin like polished stone and eyes that reflected light like mirrors. This one said nothing as it led David through corridors filled with aliens of every shape and size. Some glanced at David with curiosity. Most ignored him entirely. Humans were still novelties here, barely worth noticing. The council chamber was a vast circular room with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. David was directed to stand on that platform, alone, while 12 council members looked down at him from their elevated positions. He recognized some of them from briefings. The Drenari representative, High Counselor Mora, sat at the highest point. Her stone-like face showed no expression, but her posture radiated contempt. The human ambassador arrives, Mora announced. Her voice echoed through the chamber. Late, as expected from a species that has not yet mastered basic punctuality. Laughter rippled through the chamber. David said nothing. He had learned long ago that responding to insults only invited more of them. You are here to answer for crimes committed by your species on the world designated Fanara 3, Mora continued. Human mining operations have violated 17 galactic protocols regarding resource extraction. The damage to local ecosystems is extensive. The Council demands an explanation. David cleared his throat. With respect, High Counselor, I was not informed of these accusations until 48 hours ago. I have not had time to review any evidence. I request a delay so that I may prepare a proper defense. More laughter. This time it was louder, crueler. The human requests time, said a Yanari counselor, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of mock surprise. Perhaps he needs a few centuries to catch up with civilized species. The evidence is clear, Morris said. Sensor logs, atmospheric readings, testimonies from local officials. Your species has damaged a protected world, and you'll face consequences. The only question is whether those consequences will be sanctions or complete revocation of your trade privileges. David felt his stomach drop. Trade privileges were everything. Humanity had spent 12 years building relationships with galactic merchants, slowly gaining access to technologies and resources that would take centuries to develop on their own. Losing those privileges would set humanity back generations. I have a right to see the evidence, David said. Under galactic law, any accused party must be given access to all materials used against them. Mora waved a thin hand. You will receive the evidence files. You have 3 days to prepare your response. The Council will reconvene at that time to deliver judgment. 3 days is not enough time to 3 days, Mora repeated. That is more than generous for a species that has contributed nothing of value to this community. Be grateful we are giving you any time at all. The session ended. David was escorted out of the chamber and deposited in a small suite that would serve as his quarters during the proceedings. His staff of 4 arrived an hour later, looking as confused and worried as he felt. This is wrong, said his assistant, a young woman named Priya. We have no operations on Fanara 3. I checked our records during the transport here. We have never even sent a survey team to that sector. David nodded. He had suspected as much. Then someone is lying. The question is who and why. He looked out the window at the stars beyond Harmony Ring. Somewhere out there, humanity was going about its business, unaware that its future in the galactic community was being decided by beings who viewed them as little more than clever animals. Give me everything you can find on Fanara 3, David said. Every sensor log, every report, every piece of data the Council is using against us. And find out who benefits if humanity loses its trade privileges. Priya nodded and hurried away with the others. David remained at the window. He had 3 days to prove humanity's innocence against enemies who had already decided his guilt. 3 days to save everything his species had worked for. He thought about his daughter, about the future she deserved, about the stars that should be open to her children and their children after them. 3 days. He would have to make them count. The evidence files arrived at midnight, dumped into David's system without warning or explanation. There were thousands of documents, sensor readings, atmospheric analyses, and witness statements. Far too much for 4 people to review in 3 days. Someone wanted to bury them in data. David split the work among his team. Priya took the sensor logs. Raj handled the atmospheric readings. Kenji focused on the witness statements. David himself started with the timeline, trying to understand when these supposed violations had occurred. By morning, they had found the first problem. The timestamps are wrong, Priya said, her eyes red from staring at screens all night. Look at this sensor log from Fanara 3. It shows a human mining vessel arriving on the 14th day of the 3rd cycle. But according to our own records, we had no ships in that sector until the 22nd day. David examined the data. She was right. The dates did not match. Could be a translation error, Raj suggested. Different species used different calendar systems. No, David said. I checked the conversion tables 3 times. Someone changed these logs. The original timestamps were altered to make it look like we were there earlier than we actually were. They kept digging. More problems emerged. Atmospheric readings that showed human chemical signatures were inconsistent with the equipment humanity actually used. Witness statements contained technical descriptions of human technology that were slightly wrong, as if written by someone who had studied humans but never actually worked with them. This is all fake, Kenji said quietly. Every piece of evidence. It has been manufactured. David nodded. He had suspected as much, but seeing the proof still made his chest tight with anger. Someone had gone to enormous trouble to frame humanity for crimes they did not commit. Who benefits? Priya asked. That is what you said to look for. Who gains if we lose our trade privileges? Raj pulled up a map of galactic trade routes. Fanara 3 sits at the intersection of 3 major shipping lanes. Whoever controls mining rights there controls a significant portion of resource flow to the outer colonies. Right now, humanity has contracts with several of those colonies. If we lose our trade privileges, those contracts go to someone else, David said. The Drenari have been trying to expand into that region for decades, Kenji added. So have the Varadi and the Melisari. All 3 have representatives on the council. David stared at the map. 3 powerful species, all with reasons to want humanity out of the way, all with the resources to fabricate evidence and manipulate council proceedings. This was not justice. This was politics dressed up as law that he requested meetings with individual council members, hoping to present his findings privately before the formal judgment. Every request was denied. The Yanari delegate, Councillor Sava, finally agreed to a brief conversation, but only through a secured communication channel. You are wasting your time, Sava told him. His 4 eyes blinked in a pattern that David had learned indicated pity. The verdict has already been decided. The major powers have agreed among themselves. Your evidence will not change anything. But the evidence proves we are innocent, David said. The sensor logs were altered. The witness statements are fabricated. We can demonstrate this clearly. And who will believe you? Sava asked. A species that has been part of this community for 12 years, against species that have been here for millennia? The council will accept the evidence provided by established members. Your protests will be dismissed as the desperate lies of a primitive people trying to avoid punishment. David felt cold. This has happened before, has it not? Sava was silent for a long moment. You're not the first young species to face such accusations. Others have come before you. The Torini, the Vashkari, the Ulamori, the Distrani. All were accused of violations they did not commit. All were expelled from the galactic community. All eventually collapsed without access to trade and technology. They were eliminated, David said, not through war, but through legal manipulation. The old powers protect their positions, Sava said. Young species that grow too quickly are seen as threats. It is easier to destroy them through bureaucracy than through battle. Less messy, less visible. The connection ended. David sat alone in his quarters, the weight of understanding pressing down on him. This was not about Fanara 3. This was about keeping humanity in its place. The Council did not want justice. The Council wanted control that he thought about giving up, accepting the sanctions gracefully, as Sava had suggested. Perhaps humanity could survive with reduced trade privileges. Perhaps they could rebuild over time. But then he thought about the 4 species Sava had named. The Torini, the Vashkari, the Ulamori, the Distrani. Names that meant nothing to him, species that no longer existed because they had accepted their fate quietly. David was not going to be quiet that he called his team together. Forget about proving our innocence, he said. The Council does not care about evidence. We need a different approach. What approach? Priya asked. David did not answer immediately. He was thinking about something he had read years ago during his training for diplomatic service. Something about the founding of the Galactic Council itself, the original charter that established its rules and procedures. Find me everything you can about the Council's founding documents, he said. Every clause, every provision, every forgotten rule that no one remembers anymore. His team looked confused, but they began searching. Somewhere in those ancient texts, David believed there was a way out. He just had to find it. The diplomatic reception was supposed to be a celebration of galactic unity. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in a grand hall on Harmony Ring, drinking exotic beverages and discussing trade agreements. David attended because refusing would have looked like an admission of guilt. He regretted that decision within minutes. High Counselor Mora found him standing near a window, watching ships come and go from the station's many docking bays. She approached with 2 other Dranari, their stone-like faces arranged in expressions that might have been amusement. The human ambassador, Mora, said loudly, making sure those nearby could hear. Still here, I see. I would have thought your species would have fled back to your single planet by now. Running away is what primitives do best, is it not? David kept his voice calm. We have not run from anything yet. High Counselor, we have no intention of starting now. Bold words from a representative of a species that still measures its history in mere thousands of years. Mora gestured at the gathered aliens. Everyone here comes from civilizations that have endured for millions of years. Your entire existence is a blink of an eye to us. A footnote, an error that will soon be corrected. Laughter spread through the nearby crowd. David noticed that some aliens looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up in his defense. Fear kept them silent, he realized. Fear of drawing attention to themselves, of becoming the next target. After the reception, David returned to his quarters and found unexpected visitors waiting. 3 representatives from minor species had asked to speak with him privately. A Pelori named Tessena, a Vashi named Gurin, and an Orimundi named Balak. David had never met any of them before. We heard what Morris said to you, Tessena began. Her species was small and covered in soft fur, with large dark eyes that seemed permanently sad. We know what it feels like. The Pelori have faced similar treatment for centuries. As have the Vashi, Gurin added. He was tall and thin, with skin that changed colors based on his emotions. Right now, it was a deep blue, which David had learned indicated worry. We are accused of violations we did not commit. We are sanctioned for failures that were not our fault. We are kept dependent on the Council powers, never allowed to grow beyond our assigned place. Balak, the Orimundi, simply nodded. His species communicated partially through body language, and David could see the tension in his four-legged frame. "Why are you telling me this?" David asked. "Because you're fighting back," Tessanis said. "No one fights back. Not anymore. The last species that tried was the Destrani, and they were destroyed. But you're still standing. You have not accepted your fate." David thought about what he had discovered in the Council's founding documents. He was not ready to share it yet, not until he was certain it would work. But these three deserved honesty. "I have found something," he admitted. "A provision in the original Council Charter. Something that might give us a chance. But it is risky. If it fails, humanity will be expelled immediately." The three aliens exchanged glances. "What kind of provision?" Gurren asked. "It is called the right of challenge. Any accused species can invoke it instead of accepting a council judgment. The accused must demonstrate their value to galactic civilization through a single act that benefits all species equally. If they succeed, the charges are dismissed. If they fail, they are expelled," Belloc said, speaking for the first time. His voice was deep and rumbling. "I have heard of this. My grandfather's grandfather told stories about it. No one has invoked the right of challenge in over 3,000 years. Because no one has been desperate enough," David said. "Or foolish enough. Which are you?" Tessana asked quietly. David smiled without humor. "Probably both." He asked if they would support him if he invoked the challenge. Tessana shook her head sadly. "We cannot. The Pelori are too vulnerable. If we openly side with humanity and you fail, the Council will punish us next." Gurren and Belloc gave similar answers. They sympathized, but they were afraid. David understood. He could not blame them for protecting their own people. After they left, David stood alone in his quarters for a long time. He thought about what Mora had said at the reception, about humanity being a footnote, an error to be corrected. He thought about the four destroyed species, the ones who had accepted their fate quietly and disappeared from history. He thought about his daughter and her children and all the generations of humans who would come after. Would they live as free members of the galactic community or as servants to older powers who saw them as nothing more than useful tools? The choice was clear. David began drafting his formal notice to invoke the right of challenge. The language had to be precise, following the exact wording of the original charter. One mistake would give the Council an excuse to reject his invocation. He worked through the night, checking and rechecking every word. By morning, the notice was ready. David sent it to the Council and waited. The response came within hours. Emergency session called. All Council members required to attend. The human ambassador's invocation would be reviewed and ruled upon immediately. David dressed in his formal diplomatic attire and walked toward the Council chamber. Whatever happened next, there was no going back now. Humanity's future would be decided not by evidence or truth, but by whatever David could accomplish in the days ahead, that he hoped he was ready. He suspected he was not, but he was going to try anyway. Chaos erupted in the Council chamber the moment David finished reading his formal invocation. High Councilor Mora was on her feet immediately, her stone-like skin flushing darker with anger. "This is absurd," she declared. "The right of challenge is an obsolete provision. It has not been used in millennia. It should not apply to a species as young and insignificant as humanity." The Inari Counselor, Sava, raised one of his four hands. "With respect, High Counselor, the Charter is clear. Any accused species may invoke the right of challenge. There are no restrictions based on age or status. The intent of the founders was to give established civilizations a dignified alternative to judgment," Mora argued, "not to allow primitives to escape consequences for their actions. The text does not say that," another counselor pointed out. This was a Melisari, one of the species David suspected of participating in the frame-up. Even they could not deny the plain language of the Charter. "If we reject a valid invocation, we undermine the foundation of our own authority." Mora's eyes, like polished mirrors, fixed on David with pure hatred. "Very well. The human's invocation will be accepted. He will have 30 standard days to complete his demonstration of value. And when he fails, as he inevitably will, his species will be expelled from the galactic community permanently." David bowed his head slightly. "I accept the terms." After the session, David returned to his quarters and gathered his team. They had 30 days to accomplish something that no species had attempted in over 3,000 years. Something extraordinary enough to benefit all of galactic civilization. "What are you planning?" Priya asked. "What could we possibly do that would impress species who have been building empires since before humans discovered fire?" David had been thinking about this since he first discovered the Rite of Challenge. He had considered many options. Military strength was out of the question. Humanity's technology was impressive for their age, but it was nothing compared to the ancient powers. Scientific discovery might work, but 30 days was not enough time for a breakthrough significant enough to matter. "We are not going to try to impress them," David said. "We are going to help them." His team looked confused. "Help them how?" Raj asked. "Humanity's greatest strength has never been our technology or our military power. It has been our ability to respond to crisis, to mobilize quickly, to help others when they need it most." David pulled up data on his display. The galactic community has elaborate systems for providing aid during disasters. Bureaucratic systems. Slow systems. By the time official help arrives, thousands have usually died. "And humanity does things differently," Kinji said, beginning to understand. "We do. Earth has experienced countless natural disasters throughout our history. We have learned to respond fast, to improvise, to get help where it is needed before the paperwork is finished." David zoomed in on a particular region of the galaxy. "I have been monitoring emergency channels. There are always crises happening somewhere. We just need to find one where we can make a difference." For the next 2 weeks, they watched and waited. Small incidents occurred, but nothing significant enough to demonstrate humanity's value to the entire galaxy. David began to worry that his plan would fail simply because the right opportunity would not present itself. Then, on the 18th day, everything changed at a Pelori colony world called Hennereth suffered a massive earthquake. The ground split open across an entire continent. Cities collapsed. Millions were left without shelter, food, or clean water. The death toll was climbing by the hour. David moved immediately. He contacted Earth and requested emergency response teams. Ships were loaded with medical supplies, portable shelters, water purification systems, and everything else disaster victims might need. Volunteers came forward from every corner of human space. Within 48 hours, the first human vessels were departing for Hennereth. The Council observed these preparations with skepticism. Official galactic aid was already being organized through proper channels. It would arrive in 3 to 4 weeks, following standard procedures. The human response was seen as a chaotic mess, unprofessional and disorganized. David did not care what they thought. He only cared about the people dying on Hennereth. Human ships arrived at the Pelori colony world 6 days after the earthquake. They were the first outside help to reach the disaster zone. Galactic news networks showed images of human volunteers unloading supplies, human doctors treating the injured, human engineers working to restore basic services. The work was hard and dangerous. Aftershocks continued to shake the ground. Supplies ran short and had to be rationed. Human workers collapsed from exhaustion and got back up to continue helping. They worked alongside Pelori survivors, learning their language, understanding their needs, adapting their methods to serve people they had never met before. David remained on Harmony Ring, coordinating the effort from a distance. Every day, he received reports from the ground. Every day, the numbers of lives saved increased. Every day, more galactic observers arrived to watch what humanity was doing. High Counselor Mora dismissed the effort as a publicity stunt. Other counselors were less certain. They had never seen anything like this. Species helped each other all the time, but always through official channels, always slowly, always carefully. No one just rushed in and started saving lives without waiting for approval. 23 days after invoking the Rite of Challenge, David received word that the last human team was leaving Hennereth. Official galactic aid had finally arrived to take over. Behind them, the humans left restored infrastructure, organized refugee camps, and over 200,000 people who would have died without their intervention. Now it was time to face the Council and find out if it had been enough. Tessina, The Pelori representative who had visited David weeks earlier was crying when she found him in the corridors of Harmony Ring. Her soft fur was matted with tears, and her large dark eyes shone with an emotion David had never seen in her before. Gratitude. My family lives on Hennereth, she said, her voice breaking. My sister, her children, they were trapped in a collapsed building for 2 days before your people found them. Your doctors saved my nephew's life. He lost his leg, but he is alive because of humanity. David did not know what to say. He had organized the mission from a distance, looking at numbers and logistics. Hearing about individual lives touched by his decision made it feel suddenly very real. I am glad they are safe, he finally managed. Tessana gripped his hand with her small, furry fingers. The Pelori will not forget this. Whatever happens in the council chamber, whatever they decide about your challenge, my people will remember what humanity did for us. She hurried away before David could respond. He stood alone in the corridor, thinking about what she had said. Then he continued toward the council chamber for the final judgment. The chamber was packed. Representatives from dozens of species had come to witness the decision. News drones floated near the ceiling, broadcasting the proceedings across the galaxy. David walked to the central platform and waited. High Counselor Mora began immediately. The human ambassador invoked the right of challenge 30 days ago. He claimed he would demonstrate humanity's value to galactic civilization through a single act benefiting all species. He chose to respond to a natural disaster on a Pelori colony world. The Council must now determine whether this response meets the standard required by our founding charter. She paused, looking around the chamber. I will speak first, as is my right as presiding counselor. The human response to the Hennereth disaster was, at best, adequate. Medical supplies were delivered. Some infrastructure was restored. Lives were saved. These are all positive outcomes. However, any species with sufficient resources could have accomplished the same thing. The humans simply arrived faster because they ignored proper protocols and procedures. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. David said nothing, waiting for his chance to speak. Furthermore, Mora continued. The chaotic nature of the human response created confusion and complications for official aid workers who arrived later. The humans acted without coordination, without approval, without respect for established galactic systems. This is not the behavior of a civilized species. This is the behavior of primitives who do not understand how things are done. She turned her mirror-like eyes toward David. The Drenari vote to reject the challenge. The human response was not extraordinary. It was merely enthusiastic. Other counselors spoke. Some agreed with Mora. Others were less certain. The Varadi counselor noted that human medical techniques had saved lives that would otherwise have been lost. The Melisori counselor admitted that the speed of the human response was impressive, even if the methods were unorthodox. Then Sava, the Yanari counselor, requested permission to present additional evidence. Mora looked annoyed but could not refuse. Sava activated a display showing messages from Hennereth. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Personal testimonies from Pelori survivors, thanking the humans who had helped them. Images of human volunteers carrying children through rubble, sharing their own food with refugees, sleeping on bare ground so that disaster victims could have the few available beds. These are not the actions of a species seeking political advantage, Sava said. These are the actions of people who genuinely wanted to help. I have studied humanity since they first made contact with the galactic community. I have watched them struggle to find their place among us. I have seen them face prejudice and dismissal with patience and determination. What they did on Hennereth was not a performance. It was an expression of who they are. The chamber fell silent. David felt something shift in the atmosphere, a change in the way some counselors were looking at him. The founding charter requires a demonstration of value to all species, Sava continued. The humans have shown us something that benefits everyone. They have shown us that aid does not have to be slow, that lives do not have to be lost while we wait for bureaucratic approval, that sometimes the best thing to do is simply help without asking permission first. Mora interrupted sharply. Are you suggesting we abandon our systems? Our procedures? Our civilization is built on order and protocol. I am suggesting that order and protocol should serve life, not the other way around, Sava replied. The humans reminded us of that. I vote to accept the challenge. More counselors spoke. The votes began to split. Some supported Mora. Others sided with Sava. David counted silently in his head, trying to determine which way the decision would go. Finally, the last counselor cast their vote. The chamber fell silent as the results were tallied 0.7 to 5. In favor of accepting the challenge, David let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. It was over. The charges against humanity would be dismissed. They would keep their trade privileges. They would remain part of the galactic community. Mora rose from her seat, her face rigid with controlled fury. The human has survived his challenge. For now. But this council remembers those who make trouble. Humanity would be wise to stay quiet and grateful for the mercy they have received. David looked up at her, at this being who had tried to destroy everything his species had worked for. He had something to say to her, to all of them, something that would change everything. That he asked for permission to address the council one final time. After a long pause, Mora granted it. David stepped forward and began to speak. Every eye in the council chamber was fixed on David as he stood on the central platform. The news drones hovered closer, sensing that something important was about to happen. Even Mora, still radiating cold fury, fell silent to let the humans speak. David looked around the chamber slowly, taking in the faces of beings from across the galaxy. Some had voted to destroy humanity. Others had voted to save them. All were waiting to hear what he would say. I want to thank the council for accepting my challenge, David began. But I did not ask to speak again so that I could celebrate. I asked to speak because there are things that need to be said, things that have been kept silent for too long. Mora's eyes narrowed. Choose your words carefully, human. You have on your challenge. Do not push your luck. David ignored her. When I first arrived here, I was accused of crimes my species did not commit. The evidence against us was fabricated. Sensor logs were altered. Witness statements were invented. This was not justice. This was a coordinated effort to destroy a young civilization before it could threaten the positions of older powers. Angry murmurs erupted from several counselors. Mora rose to object, but David continued before she could interrupt. I'm not the first to face this treatment. The Tarini faced it. The Vashkari, the Elamori, the Destrani. For species that were driven out of the galactic community through similar tactics. For species that eventually collapsed and disappeared. For species that are remembered now only as cautionary tales, if they are remembered at all. The chamber had gone very quiet. David saw counselors exchanging uncertain glances. This is the system that governs our galaxy. Young species are tolerated only as long as they remain useful and subservient. The moment they grow strong enough to challenge the established order, they are eliminated. Not through war, which would be visible and controversial, but through legal manipulation, which is quiet and deniable. These are serious accusations, Sava said carefully. Do you have proof? I have patterns, David replied. I have records showing that every young species expelled from the Council over the past 2 centuries faced accusations remarkably similar to the ones brought against humanity. I have evidence that certain Council members profit directly from the trade routes and resources controlled by species that were driven out. I have enough to make any honest observer ask questions. Mora finally found her voice. You ungrateful creature. This Council saved your species. We accepted your ridiculous challenge. We allowed you to remain among us. And this is how you repay our mercy? With wild accusations and conspiracy theories. David turned to face her directly. You did not save humanity. You tried to destroy us. You failed. Now you expect us to be grateful that you did not succeed. The chamber erupted. Some counselors were shouting. Others were calling for order. The minor species representatives, scattered throughout the chamber, watched in stunned silence. David waited for the noise to die down. When he could be heard again, he spoke the words he had been preparing since the moment he understood what was really happening. You want to know what humanity offers the galaxy? You want to know our value? It is not our technology. It is not our military strength. It is not even our ability to help during disasters, though I am proud of what our people did on Hennereth. He paused, looking at Mora with an expression that contained no anger, no hatred, nothing but calm certainty. Our value is this. Despite everything you have done to us, despite the lies and the manipulation and the contempt, we choose not to seek revenge. We choose not to hate you. We choose to believe that the galaxy can be better than it is. And so, High Counselor Mora, I say to you and to everyone who supported this campaign against my people, 3 simple words. The chamber was absolutely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. We forgive you. The silence stretched for 1 heartbeat. 2. 3. Then Tessina, the Pelori representative, rose from her seat. She walked down to the central platform and stood beside David. She said nothing. She did not need to. Gurren, the Vashi, followed. Then Balak, the Orimundi. One by one, representatives of minor species throughout the chamber rose and moved to stand with the human ambassador. Species that had been afraid to speak up, afraid to challenge the established order, found their courage in David's words. Mora watched this with something close to horror. The old alliances, the careful balance of power that had kept the council functioning for millennia, was cracking before her eyes. This changes nothing, she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. The council will continue as it always has. David looked at her with something that might have been pity. Perhaps, perhaps not. But something has started here today that cannot be stopped. The minor species have seen that it is possible to stand up to you. They have seen that there is another way. He turned to address the entire chamber one final time. Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We want to be partners, equals, friends. We believe that every species, young or old, has something valuable to contribute. And we believe that forgiveness is stronger than revenge. Today we have proven that. Whatever comes next, that proof will remain. David stepped down from the platform, surrounded by the representatives who had chosen to stand with him. Behind him, the old order of the council remained in their seats, watching as the future walked away without them. Something new was beginning, and humanity had started it with 3 words no one had expected: we forgive you.